right. Welcome to this episode of the Formula Podcast. I'm your host, Trevor Carlson. On the Formula, we interview folks from all around the world from their habits, routines, perspectives, and experiences that have led them into designing a life that fits or works for them. It's also kind of my own pursuit of figuring out the formula for the lifestyle that I would like to design. Today, I have a guest with me that was recommended by previous guest Josh Berry. Sneha Mandala, and she is a specialist in, let's see if I can say this correctly, it's sustainable peak performance, so I looked it up again. And Sneha, do you want to tell me what does that mean when you're a specialist in sustainable peak performance?
Sure, Trevor. So, first of all, thank you for having me. Thank you for the opportunity today. You would find a lot of experts who would say productivity first, efficiency first, performance first. So, you would find a lot of those kinds of experts. And on the other hand, you'll find a lot of experts who focus on the calm in life, the balance in life, the mental health aspect that you need to focus on in life. What I do and what I talk about and what I share is in the sweet spot between the two. So I truly believe that performance and productivity doesn't have to be exclusive from mental health and not burning out and not feeling stressed in life. And hence, what I do is what I call as not just peak performance, but sustainable peak performance.
So, one of the things that you wrote on your site is you're able to help people kind of do their work effortlessly. And I think that as among probably many other people, would love to know what that means and how do we actually do it, because I would love it if my workflow was it felt a bit more effortlessly, and maybe it has to do with like I know you mentioned flow. I'm gonna Mitch, I cannot say his name, the man who
Mihai
created the
Mihai.
concept. Thank you. The man who created flow. So I'm gonna let you answer that question, dive a little deeper, but I'm very curious as to how we do that.
Absolutely. And Trevor, maybe we can start off with why we need to make our work feel effortless. And just like you shared, many people want to feel like their work doesn't feel as tedious, their work would feel like as if they are swimming downstream, but it's never the case because the culture that I grew up in and a lot of people grew up in was hustle and grind and work hard and chase your passion and just keep at it and to the point that you're burning out, which is probably a good sign because only then success will follow. Only then money and fame and wealth and everything, all the good things in life will follow. And yes, sure, to some extent, working hard and hustling and grinding and struggling do lead to results. But a lot of research has shown over time, over and over again, that beyond a point, hard work does not lead to improved results. It only leads to more stress and, in fact, decreased performance, decreased productivity. It's like if you are an athlete, you're training way over what your current level is over a period of time, you are going to be susceptible to injury, which is what work in our current lifestyle feels like, that we are in a rut and we are going through it mindlessly to the point where we wake up one day and we look back at our life, at our work, at our career, and feel like, where did all the years go? Where did the joy go? And that's the reason why I very strongly advocate for, if there is a way to make work effortless, we all should be focused on that. The question is how, right? Because I'm sure, Trevor, you might have experienced, and your audience might have experienced moments in time where you completely felt so absorbed in a particular activity. You felt rewarded because you were doing the activity. You didn't wait for an outcome. You didn't care about the outcome, by the virtue of you just feeling so excited, so involved, and so absorbed in the activity. There was rapt attention. You lost complete sense of time. The outside noise fell silent. The outside chatter fell silent, but also the inside noise and the inside chatter, the self doubt, the nagging, the stuff that happens internally fell silent. And you were just like purely at play when you were doing something. Now, maybe that was just wrapping Christmas presents recently. I don't know. It could have been mowing the lawn or writing something in your case, or just being fully absorbed in a conversation. Positive psychologists describe that state as flow. And you're right, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, popularly considered the founder of flow or the grandfather of flow, dedicated his entire life to that research. And a lot of other experts have followed up on his research too. But what you see a lot is that this kind of research helps a lot of peak performers, individuals, especially in the fields of athletics or action adventure sports or in the creative spaces. How do you reach your peak performance, not get distracted, find your flow? What I noticed is that flow is a universal concept. You and I have all experienced it, whether we realize it or not. How about we intentionally bring those conditions into our work life, your everyday average workday? Because flow state is, based on research, the only time when your body is flooded by five performance enhancing neurochemicals. There's serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, anandamide. So all of these neurochemicals either pique your attention or make you feel good. There's endorphins too that could reduce your stress. So flow state is point in time where your body and mind are performing at their optimal state in a way where your performance is at your peak, but also your stress is at its least. That is the reason why I strongly believe that we should all chase for that effortlessness that we can find in work, that sweet spot between great performance and also excellent mental health.
Hmm. I have so many questions. So I
Mhm.
know one thing that's like a big topic is this. Well, there's multiple things that I can go a lot of ways with this, but there's a few things. Like you have like I feel like it's almost like this overworking grind culture that's just like sheer brute force everything, and that's like the best way to do it. Then you have like how do you develop like the routines? I feel like morning routines are something people are constantly talking about, is like how can I set myself up for success throughout the day? So I guess in two areas, I would love to hear your opinion on this like brute force technique versus like kind of the approach that you're talking about, which I feel like is more intentional. Is there more self-care involved? Is it more like you're conscious of the environment that you're working in, so you're trying to set it up in a way where you're able to work at like a deeper level?
Mhm.
So I guess I'm wondering like what your thoughts are on that, and then I guess let's talk about that a little bit because I'm so curious as to how your research and your work impacts all of that.
Absolutely. So we'll start off with your first question about the brute force culture that we see at work. I'm gonna share something about my personal life too. I have seen my dad work for, he's a boomer, work for the same company his entire career. And I have seen him prioritize work over some of the other priorities that make a lot more sense now than they did during his time, during his career. And then you see a lot of millennials entering the workforce, Gen Z now entering the workforce, where they're like, I'm not going to be staying loyal to the company. I'm going to stay loyal to myself. And that's how the future of work is really evolving. You go from the industrial revolution age where it's like, we're going to pay you by the hour. We need you to put in this kind of labor. And, there's this whole carrot and stick motivation, external motivation going on. And then you get people like my father who are like, oh, work is life, right? I'm going to dedicate myself to this company my entire career. But things are not the same anymore. So the brute force technique about like forcing people to get a particular job done in a particular amount of time, that kind of leadership style or that kind of work culture is not going to work anymore, because now with the millennials and the Gen Z in the workforce, we are a lot more aware of what our needs are. We are more respectful of what our needs are. And like I said, we are very loyal to what we need and what we care about and who we are essentially. So that kind of, oh, we need amazing business results, let's throw more people into it. Or if we can't find more people, let's throw more hours into it. That kind of leadership style is actually detrimental for the engagement levels and the mental health of the current workforce. So that is the reason why you see a lot of the great resignation. Like, this is not working for me. I'm just going to quit and stay at home or go find another job. Or people who don't quit, they quiet quit instead. So they're coasting. And a lot of research says that the average employee, American employee, spends less than 4 hours being productive during a workday.
Hmm.
So they're coasting, they're checking out social media, they're just having a chat with a friend. We don't know what they are up to, but that means that kind of work culture is not
Hmm.
helping gain the extraordinary business results that at one point during my dad's time it probably could have generated.
Right.
Yeah, the second aspect to your question is yes, I am talking about going the opposite route where you are more intentional about how you spend your time, whether you are an entrepreneur, whether you are a full time employee. And I understand there is this whole self care trend that is going around on social media, but self-care is so much more than taking time off for yourself or like having a spa day. It all starts with self-awareness, really. Who are you? What is your natural state of being? What
Hmm.
naturally drives you? Do you know all of those things? Have you spent enough time reflecting on what makes you up? What are your core beliefs? Who are you? How would you like to work? How would you like to contribute? I believe that comes before the social media self care aspect, the self awareness, really. So, only when you find out more about yourself and you respect it and you want to preserve it, that would be true self care, in my opinion.
Yeah. So let's say you don't have the answers to those questions. How
Hmm.
do you find them? So you said reflecting. Is there a specific process? You've probably done this with a lot of people. So what does that
Hmm.
process look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing that I get asked is, so how do I find my flow? You talk about making work feel effortless. And yeah, sure, if
Hmm.
you create the conditions of flow around yourself, you're in an environment that is very conducive to you getting into flow. It's like an athlete's pre-game ritual. So for some people, the morning routines, the more intentional, this is, I wake up at 4 a.m. and I do exactly these five things in order to feel fully refreshed and get into work and perform at my peak and get into my flow. That's like a pre-game ritual for an athlete. So for some
Hmm.
people, they have figured out that formula. And to answer your question, for those
Hmm.
who haven't figured out that formula, the top two aspects I want people to remember, that it's not a fluffy concept of, oh, what do I do in order to find my flow? I've never experienced flow before. So instead of going
Yeah.
there, I like to break it down into two very understandable concepts. Okay. The two conditions or the two factors that create flow for you or help you uh, get more into flow or spend more time into flow are, one, which is very obvious, doing what you love. Anybody who has ever picked up a self-help book knows this. Chase your passion, right? Do what you love or learn to love what you do, and then you are going to be successful. You are going to have great results. Sure, that research says that is true to a great extent. Drive, which is internal motivation, is important for people to come up with great quality work. And drive is you feeling like you're the captain of your ship. So
Hmm.
I would want anyone who's listening to this right now to think about, do you feel like you're the captain of your own ship at work right now? Whether you're a full time employee or an entrepreneur. What do you need in order to feel like you're the captain of your ship? You need to have access to the steering wheel. You need to feel competent that you are able to steer the ship. But most importantly, you need to know where the ship is headed.
Hmm.
So, this is the theory that, and if anyone wants to dive a little bit deeper into Drive, there is a book called Drive by Dan Pink where he talks about these three
Hmm.
aspects to increase drive. Do you feel autonomy? Do you feel mastery at what you're doing? Do you see the purpose in what you're doing? So, those of you who don't feel like all these three factors are not present, I would highly encourage that you start there. What do you need in order to feel autonomous in what you're doing? What are some of the restraints that you're working around? Can you go to your manager or to your stakeholders or to your clients and renegotiate the contract of the way you work in order to feel more independent, feel like you have a choice, feel that autonomy that I was talking about? Mastery, are you consistently working on improving your skills? How are you investing the time back into yourself, back into your skills, and upping that mastery quotient here to increase your drive in what you're doing. And finally, purpose. Do you see how whatever you're doing is connecting to the bigger, larger purpose of your organization or your team or what you initially set out to do? So, reminding yourself, checking in about these three aspects can help you determine, oh, I think I lack drive here, and this is how I can increase drive. This is how I can increase the passion I feel towards what I do. Because greater productivity means lesser time involved in working because you're more efficient, which leads to lesser burnout. To an extent, because I haven't shared the second factor with you yet, to an extent, because when you're more efficient, you're spending lesser hours grueling and struggling and grinding it out. Think about any amazing person that you know who loves what they do, right? We all know someone in our life who's doing what they love, but they're still burning out. So clearly, that is not the only thing that creates those effortless conditions. So, doing what you love is not enough. What I would argue is more important is doing that thing or that task in the way you love to do it. Doing what you love versus doing it the way you love to do it. One is drive, the other is authenticity. Do you feel like you're being authentic in what you're doing at work, be it in your business or in your career? What is authenticity? Sounds very fluffy, but in the core of the concept, it basically means you in your default natural state. And there's a lot of learnings about this concept from the Eastern philosophy, Taoism or Taoism. And it talks about for you to have a fulfilled, stress free life, you have to spend more time in life being than doing.
Hmm.
So that's
What does that mean?
so
What does that mean?
being is I'm in my very default state. This is my natural way to respond or react to something that's going on versus me doing or struggling or swimming upstream. So that's being versus doing. So if I choose to have this conversation with you, Trevor, and I'm talking about something that I truly care about, like I am right now, I'm just being in my natural state. Versus if you had asked me, can you talk about your favorite subjects in your engineering degrees? I would still have that conversation with you, but it wouldn't feel like I am just being. It would feel like I'm putting in the effort. I'm like swimming upstream. It feels like a irritating, grating noise in my mind. Whereas this feels like I'm just flowing downstream. I'm still putting in the effort. Like we're still having this conversation. Still spending time and resources with you, but it doesn't feel like work. And that is what the
Hmm.
core of effortlessness is. I'm not saying it is effort hyphen less. I'm not saying you don't put in
Hmm.
the effort at all, but you put in the effort in a way that doesn't feel like work. Your work feels more like play. Your work feels like something that you would do just because, not because someone's paying you for it or someone has asked you for it. And that is the difference between being versus doing. So that's another practical question that your audience could ask themselves right now. If I'm documenting something at work, is this my natural default way of working? Or does it feel like I'm doing and putting in the effort and, swimming upstream? The more and more time you spend at work just being in your natural element, being your whole self at work versus doing, the more authentic you're going to feel at work. And those two factors, drive and authenticity, create those conditions of flow for you. You're doing what you love, and you're doing it in the way you love to do it.
Hmm. Man, I'm so curious about this. Is there, because I'm as you're saying that, I'm like, okay, there's probably a way that like personally I can get into like that I know what I like.
Mhm.
Like I enjoy storytelling. I enjoy, let's just call it storytelling. We don't have to go too deep into that. But then it's like doing it in the way that you like. Is that we were gonna give like a concrete detail? What does that look like? It means something like it looks like play, but does that how can you make like your normal, how do you take like something that maybe like you love what you do, but maybe you don't love the way you do it,
Mm-hmm.
how do you bring play into that workflow or that environment? Sorry, I'm
Absolutely.
like thinking this through in my head as I'm thinking it, so hopefully it made sense.
No, this is very common question that I get asked. So we can't change our job overnight. I know what I'm doing, and that's why I'm doing this job, or that's why I'm in this
Hmm.
business. But how do I know what exactly to tweak in order to find that way I love to work? Because I feel
Hmm.
that stress, but how do I fix it? So I'll take the same example that you just shared about, you said, let's
Hmm.
call it storytelling, right? And I come to
Hmm.
you and I say, hey, I'm going to have my wedding in a couple of months. I'm going to India to check out
Yeah.
the venue of my wedding, million wedding events. I
Yes.
want you to be my filmographer. Okay. I want you to
Hmm.
weave the story of how I met my partner and how we have evolved into being the singular unit, and now we're making it officially bound for all of our
Hmm.
families to celebrate. I want you to capture all of that. And Trevor, you say, "Oh, that's perfect. I'm amazing at storytelling. My medium is film, so I can come up with like a nice 20-minute short film to capture all of those things." And I'm like, "I'm your billionaire Indian client, okay? Super rich." I say, "Great, Trevor. Please have that ready before the wedding, okay? You have 2 months." And you're like, "Sure, you're gonna have a masterpiece. You're confident." 2 days later, I come to you and I say, but Trevor, I don't think my partner appreciates film as much as I do or you do. Can we come up with this picture book concept instead? And
Hmm.
you're like, okay, I think I can work with that. And I'm like, yeah, sure, you can. I have seen you've seen your skills. I'm sure you're gonna be good with that as well. You're gonna go
Hmm.
back to your workspace. Do you really think you're gonna come up with a masterpiece in a couple of months?
Probably not. No.
And even if you do, you're struggling every day of those 2 month period in order to create it. It doesn't feel like you are in your flow. It doesn't feel like you are in your element. Guess what just happened? You're doing what you love, but I just restricted the way you love to do it.
Mm.
I just removed
That
that
make
whole factor out of the equation. I placed constraints and I told you, this is the result I want, and this is exactly how you're going to do it. You said you love your job, right? I'm sure you can figure it out. And that, unfortunately, is the environment at a lot of workplaces these days. Oh, we have these amazing engineers who want to like solve all of these problems that we're going to solve, but then the leadership
Hmm.
comes in and says, this is the result that we need, and this is exactly how you're going to do it. So, guess what's happening? Those employees, or you in this particular scenario, you are spending time and resources and energy into doing something in the way that doesn't feel natural to you, into being something or someone that is not who you are. That is all wasted energy that could have been redirected into creating something meaningful, powerful, and beautiful. That is where people get like they fall off the rails, where I am doing what I love, but damn, I didn't
Mm.
spend enough time to figure out what is the way I love to do things. And just
Mm.
like I broke down drive, I'm happy to break this down as well. Authenticity, you can break down into three core concepts. What are your core values? What are your work values? Is it integrity? Is it creativity? Is it teamwork? What is something that you truly believe in that your work should encompass? And is your work currently encompassing those core values that truly value teamwork, but you're not really working on it with a team? That brings down your authenticity. The second aspect is your strengths. Are you leveraging your strengths? And this seems like a very simple question, but when you get into the whole concept of performance management, you do the whole, oh, these are your strengths and these are your opportunities, but let's work on your opportunities, get you stronger there. And that is typically the traditional mindset of leadership too. But I ask them, are you looking to create cookie cutter employees where everyone is just like
Hmm.
well rounded in all the aspects necessary? If so, what is the purpose of a team? The beauty of the team is you You fit together like these amazing puzzle pieces. So, are you encouraging your people, or are you giving yourself the permission to leverage your strengths? What are your strengths? What are you amazing at? What do other people recognize you to be amazing at? Because research shows that when you're working in your skill field, in your skill area, it feels like a lot less effort when you're doing it because it feels fun, it feels play. You feel like I got this. That's why
Yeah.
when I say don't use film, make a storybook instead, you're not playing to your strengths over there.
Hmm.
So you are reducing your authenticity. And the third aspect is, what are your work styles and preferences? What are your communication styles and preferences? And it takes a long time to figure that out. And there are a lot of assessments out there. You can do personality assessments, leadership style assessments, communication assessments. It will help you if you're not very good at observing the way you behave with people. Those assessments can actually help you understand yourself a little bit better, help raise that self awareness that I was talking about. I'll take an example. For the longest time, I thought I am a social being, I'm approachable, I'm friendly, hence I might be an extrovert. Okay. And things change when I got into my most recent job, and my VP pulls me aside one day and she's like, Sneha, I thought you're, like by the virtue of you doing a lot of speaking engagements and you facilitating and being a people person, why are you so silent in our team meetings? And I was like, what? Is that what's happening? I didn't even realize that. And my default was, oh no, I should speak up in team meetings. I should participate in conversations. So I spent the next several months trying to be someone I was not, trying to put in the effort that wasn't being, but I was doing. So I would just speak up even when there was no need to, and it felt so exhausting to me. And when I dived a little bit deeper into what my personality style is and what my work style preference is, or what my communication preference is, I found out that on the MBTI scale, I'm an extreme introvert, actually, like a 94% introvert. I don't come across like that. So people would expect me to speak up a lot more than I naturally would tend to. Took me a long time to accept that. But the confidence that this kind of self awareness gives you is incredible, because I could go back to my leader and say that, hey, I know that you are expecting me to be a certain way, but that's not who I am. My authentic self is to lean back and observe and grasp everything that's going on around me, and find patterns in the communication that is going on with the people. Now, I want you to trust me, and maybe you can test me out. I want you to trust me that if I have something to share that could change the course of the interaction or the meeting, I promise that I will be the loudest voice in the meeting. I need you to trust me on that. And that felt like just a huge weight lifted off my shoulders, because it took me some time, but I figured out what is my way of being and not doing, what is my authentic self. And I respected that, I preserved that. It took me some time, it took some negotiation, but that is what allowed me to not feel exhausted and stressed and burnout, but redirect all that energy into creating something amazing, essentially
Yeah,
finding my flow.
that's awesome. It's one of the things that you made me think of was when you're like working as a coach, influencer, internet entrepreneur. I think there's this feeling or this push that you have to fit into like a niche, or like, oh, this is the only type of thing that works. So it's like you're doing what you love. So as you were talking about that, I'm like, I make uh, travel videos for a YouTube channel, and when I make the videos I like, whether they do well or not, I'm like, this is hilarious. This is so much fun. Nobody else might like it, but I think this is great. Versus like, here's the top three things to do when you go to Delhi. It's like, do I care? I mean, do I care about making the video? Probably not. So I think that's something to keep in mind no matter what field you're in. Is, I mean, there's obviously like the commercial aspect where
Hmm.
you probably need to make something that people want, that you can get compensated for, like be in a position, a role that you do that. But it's also remembering like, I have a friend who he uh he makes board games, And he like did his first Kickstarter years ago and he's done very well, but then they've started just like kind of becoming a board game factory. So now instead of like taking the time to like play the games and play test them and make them like this perfect piece of art, it's become more about like how quickly can we get something out and how much are people going to buy of it.
Mm.
So and I think he's kind of become a bit burned out
Mm-hmm.
because of it,
Mm-hmm.
which kind of speaks to what you're saying. So how do you balance that where like when you're in a position where your living might rely on whatever it is that you're doing, but how you started out doing it and the things you were interested in the beginning are like that's like what you loved doing.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I'm asking here? It's
Yeah.
like how do you find the middle ground, or how do you just like say I'm just going to do what's fun and the people who like me will find me or sort of like the right customers will fit into that bucket.
The latter aspect is something that I would say is just like blind faith. I'm just going to do what I
Hmm.
enjoy and, success will follow. And I'm not about that. My background is
Hmm.
engineering. I'm very process driven. So for me, that
Right.
just sounds very risk prone. That is not
Hmm.
what I'm advocating for. What comes to mind
Hmm.
here, since you're asking that question, is Josh and I talked about this a couple of times. I do not remember who said this, whose quote this is, but it goes something along the lines of this, okay? Don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you feel alive, because the world needs more people who have come alive. Not sure who said it, but that
Hmm.
just resonates so strongly with me. When you consider whatever your definition of success is, when you consider the life stories of those successful people in your eyes, the people that you look up to, they weren't about following a formula for commercial success. There is no one way or one method to commercial success. Isn't that the beauty of life? There's just not one way to get from point A to point B that, oh no, I wanted to go ACD and, commercial success is wanting me to go AED. And how do I find that middle ground? No, it's never like that. There are like a million ways to get from point A to point B that maybe you have not explored yet. So that is the childlike wonder that I encourage people to have, to treat everything like an experiment, to treat everything like, hey, this sounds interesting, this sounds like fun. Let me explore what are the different ways to get there. And maybe out of 100 ways to get to point B, 30 of them can lead to commercial success. But which out of these 30 are my ways of getting to point B? So it's not about a black and white situation. Life is all about choices and the million different alternative ways to make something happen. What I'm encouraging you to have is that childlike wonder to treat this as an experiment and say, they don't have to be mutually exclusive. Perhaps I can find my flow in three different ways, and two out of those ways can lead to commercial success. Doesn't have to be like when you operate with that mindset of abundance and choice, you start looking at world in a completely different manner. You stop feeling restricted that is it my way or is it the commercial success way? If I go my way, can I pay the bills? You stop being so restrictive about it when you have that childlike wonder in you.
Yeah, it's like you're playing game versus struggling.
Yeah, and for a lot of entrepreneurs, this weighs heavily on their mind, and there are different schools of thought into it. Oh, you just need to quit all of your stable sources of income and dive right into it. Whereas there are others who encourage you need to have some sort of stable income for allowing you to play, because that ceases to be a distracting factor that bogs you down and exhausts you, so that you can fully be creative and fully explore and discover what I'm talking about. And I tend to
Hmm.
be the person who is supporting the latter school of thought, because if you dive right into things and you don't remove those constricting factors and the factors that could bog you down and exhaust you, your ability to play gets limited. Even before you get
Hmm.
started, you're just operating under conditions of extreme pressure to prove yourself. And life is not about proving yourself, life is about figuring things out, life is about improving yourself instead.
Yeah, I feel like that's really good advice because who was I listening to? I was listening to, man, I can't remember. Oh, no, I was reading Richard Branson's book. It's called Screw It, Let's Do It. And he was describing, like, he's talking about how he makes decisions, which is, to you, it would come off as very reckless, but he's kind of like, he basically kind of trusts his gut. And if it's fun, like, he doesn't want to ever get involved in something where it's like, when he thinks about it, it stresses him out or it
Mm,
makes him not really enjoy life.
hmm.
Like, he likes to go after things that are challenging, maybe even impossible, but also seem like they're fun
Yeah.
to him. And I think a lot of people maybe approach stuff in a different way where it's like, okay, I have to put in all this work to like be stable before I'm allowed to like have fun and pursue that. Especially today, I feel like there's so much opportunity if you do start looking into like things that are fun for
Mm,
you. Like
mm.
there's that like childlike play, whether it's taking pictures, making games, or whatever it is. I think that we're maybe we live in a pretty lucky time where we have a lot more opportunity to do those things than previous generations did.
I love that. And I'm not asking people to suddenly switch jobs because they heard this thing today that, oh, I don't think I'm working in the way I love to work, so I'm just going to quit my job. No, that's not what I'm asking you to do. What I'm asking you is a more important question. Are there elements that I enjoy? What are the ways that I like to work? Can I bring those elements into what I'm already doing? What do I love doing? And if I don't love what I'm doing, can I bring in elements of what I love doing into what I'm already doing? And there are ways. So even if it seems completely unrelated, right? You are a sales or marketing manager and you're like, I'm not really vibing it. I don't find my flow in what I'm doing. But what gets you into flow is perhaps coaching your niece for soccer lessons or something like that. But you have that inherent coach mentality or the teacher aspect in you. Is there any way that you can bring in those elements to make what you're already doing more fun, more play like, more childlike wonder and excitement that fills you with those things and helps you find your flow? Perhaps it is you taking up the initiative to start a marketing leadership institute for your
Hmm.
extended team, and you take the initiative to teach some of those skills that you have acquired during your career to some of the more junior or fresh, for a lack of better word, fresher employees. But you're bringing those elements into what you're already doing, so you're adding a little bit more drive and a little bit more authenticity to what you're already doing, and that's all I'm asking for. It's not about these big massive reckless changes. Maybe not everyone thinks in Richard Branson's way, right? They don't want to perhaps make decisions that way. And that's not what I'm asking you. If you can do that, great. I have done that. I have never moved out of my parents' house until like I was 23 years old. And the moment I moved out, I've actually not just moved out of my parents' home, I moved out of the country, I moved out of the continent into a completely new culture. I have done those things. That doesn't have to be that kind of an extreme. Bring in little elements that can help you find flow at work. That's how you make your work feel more effortless.
Yeah. So I asked the question before, like where you start with that, and you kind of answered with like the reflection piece, and we've discussed like different bits and pieces of these elements. So just so we can like have like if someone's listening and they want a very specific to-do list, so it's like they do the reflecting, they answer the questions that were previously uh, addressed. Then after they've done the reflecting and they have their answers, then what's their next step?
Absolutely. And maybe this is something that we can give away to the audience too. But if I had to wrap everything up, you forget everything that Trevor and I just discussed, and you want to remember just like the next couple of minutes, it's going to be a great takeaway. A, hard
Mm.
work is overrated because beyond a point, it doesn't lead to better results. It only leads to more stress and burnout. Remember that. B, in order to make your work feel more effortless, where work doesn't feel like work, work feels like play, you need to create conditions of flow. Spend more time in flow. Find your flow. How do you do that? Well, there is a formula. Two factors that lead to conditions of flow: drive and authenticity. And this drive is internal motivation. Authenticity is being in your natural default state. Drive is doing what you love, and authenticity is doing it the way you love to do it. And here's an easy to do for you. Sit down and think about what are your top three responsibilities in your business or in your career right now. Okay. When I say top three responsibilities, I mean where are you spending the most time and energy at? Okay. List those three things down. I want you to rate yourself against drive and authenticity for each of those three. Okay. How driven do I feel when I'm doing this task? How real or how authentic do I feel when I'm doing this task? And no matter where you have lower score, you clearly know that in task A, you need to increase drive. Task B, you need to increase authenticity, right? You have a kind of a mind map on where you need to head next. And simple ways to increase drive in what you're already doing without having to make major shifts. Drive is autonomy, mastery, purpose. How can you increase feeling like you have choice at work? You have that freedom at work. You feel that autonomy at work. How do you increase your competence or your mastery in what you're doing? How do you find that purpose? Whom do you talk to in order to see how your role fits into the bigger picture? Having those three elements can automatically help improve drive. If you feel like you're lacking in authenticity in any of your job responsibility, I want you to ask yourself, what are my core values? What do I care about the most at work? Some examples of core values would be teamwork, creativity, integrity, or for me, it is about fairness. Are those things showing up in what you're doing? If not, how do you ensure that you are considering bringing in those core values and what you're doing? What about your strengths? Do you know what your strengths are? Lots of assessments out there to understand what you're great at, or even having a simple conversation with a trusted friend or mentor can help you understand that. How much of your work day are you spending when you're doing that particular task by leveraging those strengths? Even if they seem unrelated, how can you bring in some of those strengths into what you're already doing? And finally, what are your natural default work styles and preferences? Have you negotiated with your stakeholders, be it in your business or in your career, that hey, this is the way I work. This is my API. This is how I function. This is how I operate. Now I understand that's not how you operate. Can we find a middle ground that works for both of us rather than me trying to fit into something that who I am not? That's how you increase authenticity at work. Drive and authenticity creates conditions of effortless flow in your life, and that is when you have extraordinary results while preserving your mental health. And hence, you perform at your peak in a sustainable manner.
That was great. I'm gonna have to do some of my like some reflecting of my own because in both of my roles, I run a small digital marketing firm and then I have like a travel content company as well. And I'm just thinking like, all right, clearly there's like certain days and tasks where I feel more burned out than others. And then there's other days where I just feel like it was like I'm like, oh, I get paid to do this. That was easy. And
Yeah.
so I think just maybe taking the time to reflect on how we're doing some of these things and just like are these tasks that we have to do? Are they tasks that another team member could do? Something where it's like, or maybe it's like the environment we do them in.
Yeah.
Maybe, I mean, we have to do accounting even though I don't want to. It's like can I just create an environment that makes it feel more fun, even though the task itself might even be something that is not that much fun, that you have to do?
I think you tied a nice golden bow to the wrap up that I just did, because at the end of the day, it really comes down to the feeling at the end of the day, right? It's in Gen
Mhm.
Z's language, it's about the vibe it's giving. Do I feel like I am
Yeah.
exhausted after doing this? Or do I feel like, damn, where did all the time go? Do I feel bogged down after doing this? Or do I feel alive and energized? Exhausting versus
Mhm.
feeling energized. That's exactly what it comes to. And it all starts with self awareness.
Yeah, that's great. I feel like this conversation has been helpful. Even like me selfishly, I'm just like, okay, I got to do some reflecting and figure out how I can turn more of my workday into play and more fun. So I really appreciate you taking the time to come on and talk through all of this. If anybody wants to like learn more or find out, like, I know you have your TEDx your TED Talk that you did, how would they follow you or find out more about the work that you do?
Yeah, you can search me on social media, YouTube and LinkedIn specifically, and even Instagram, Sneha Mandala with my name. But all of these resources that I'm talking about, all of the stuff I post on social media is gonna always be on my website, snehamandala.com. And as a bonus to your listeners, we should definitely give them that reflection sheet to help do the to-do stuff that we talked about.
Yes, if you send over a link, I'll throw it in the show notes and they can just download it directly from
Perfect.
there or like go to your site and download it.
I
So
have a file that I use as a handout for my closed door audience, but I can share the file with you.
awesome. I would greatly appreciate that. Okay, so we can just wrap things up here and that's pretty much it. Anything lastly you'd like to share with the audience?
Just a little math for perspective. If you consider a 40 to 42-hour work week, turns out you spend 100,000 hours at work in your lifetime. That's equivalent to 11 years of your life. And that's a pretty damn long time to feel stuck, to feel bogged down, to feel exhausted. Instead, try to make it more fun, playful, energizing, and effortless. 100,000 hours, it puts things into perspective.
That's a long time. That does put things into perspective.